tonight we have the Stanford College Republicans who will give you an hour of commentary. Get ready. It'll be interesting.
We have a full hour of stuff. We're gonna talk about the left's new obsession with late-term abortion. We're going to talk about the President Trump's fight for a border wall and border security. We're going to talk about media bias, the rise of socialism and totalitarian ideology in the Democrat Party. We really have a packed hour for you here today. But let's begin with our discussion on media bias, particularly the Covington case, the Covington Catholic School case, which took place about 2 weeks ago. Ryan, take it away.
All right, so Catholic children in MAGA hats caused a complete meltdown on social media and traditional channels over the past 2 weeks. And one of the clearest examples to date of the rampant fake news problem we have with our current media landscape. Many of the possessors of the coveted blue check mark on Twitter openly called for violence and mutilation of the children and their families. Something that should cause a bit of retrospection even for the most unhinged of leftists, and you know who you are. A little background for the unaware. Students from Covington Catholic High School in Kentucky went on a field trip to Washington to attend the March for Life. While waiting for their bus home, they were harassed by the so-called Black Hebrew Israelites. That's an openly anti-Semitic, anti-white cult. Members of this cult group were shouting anti-homosexual and racist epithets at the children, but this, strangely, wasn't highlighted by our wonderful news media, and in fact, it was hardly mentioned if you looked at any of the mainstream coverage. To drown out the horrible things being said by the cultists, the students began chanting some of their school spirit chants. It was at this time that the Native American provocateur Nathan Phillips began to beat his drum, walking into the middle of the Covington group. Mr. Phillips walked directly up to Covington student Nick Sandman, invading his personal space while continuing to beat his drum and chant loudly, just a few inches from the boy's face. This was the interaction in the original clip that went viral, completely devoid of context and even including a fake description that the kids had surrounded and taunted a peaceful Indian. Mr. Phillips proceeded to use this opportunity to lie in interviews that the kids had chanted, "Build the wall," which video evidence shows never happened. In fact, in the video, someone can be heard yelling, "Go back to Europe, this is not your land," at the children. In any case, this encounter led to headlines like, quote, "Boys in Make America Great Again hats mob Native elder at Indigenous Peoples March." That's from the trusty New York Times, which of course didn't bother to interview the boys or watch the source video.
New York slimes.
Terrible. The response on social media was disturbing and really revealed some of the tremendous hatred in our country today for people like the Covington students. Jack Morrissey, producer of the recent Disney film Beauty and the Beast, tweeted, quote, "MAGA kids go screaming, hats first, into the wood chipper," complete with a gory illustration of a child being shoved into a wood chipper. Nice one, Jack. Yeah, he makes movies for your kids. Jack, of course, still has his blue check mark. Eric Abris, blue check mark holder and writer for Vulture and contributor to Vice.
Vulture, appropriate.
Yep. Tweeted about the boys, quote, "I want these people to die. Simple as that. Every single one of them and their parents."
So much for not normalizing violence.
That's good stuff. Uncle Shoes, another blue check mark, tweeted, "Throw these blanks in the dumpster fire. We don't need them. Lock the kids in the school and burn that blank to the ground." Country music singer Wheeler Walker Jr. tweeted, referring to Nick Sandman, "If you know this little blank, punch him in his blank, and I will send you all of my albums in vinyl, autographed." Really neat stuff. These are just a few of the calls for violence, and some of the others are a little too hot for radio. Covington Catholic actually had to close temporarily after being inundated with threats. Now, what does all this mean in a broader context? What's the takeaway? The takeaway is we have a media that will gloss over adult cultists yelling horrible, racist, and hateful things at children in order to further the greater goal of demonizing and intimidating conservatives. Our social media companies will ban and censor those with right-wing viewpoints and yet allow overt calls for violence against kids, children, so long as the perpetrators are on the right political team. We have journalists who will deliberately misrepresent a situation in order to direct maximum hatred toward their political enemies, even if the hatred is directed at kids. And that is why when Trump says that much of our news media has become the enemy of the people, more and more Americans agree. And now we'll just go to a brief panel discussion to talk about this and the rest of the pattern of fake news in America.
Absolutely.
I mean, is this really anything new? I mean, we had Antifa, like, you know, a few years back blocking Milo Yiannopoulos. We've had like people hit with bike clocks. Like, it just goes up from here, and it's disgusting the kind of things we've been seeing.
I think just the exposure of this one was a little bit bigger. I mean, we had it was when it looked like the kids had encircled Nathan Phillips, it blew up. It was the biggest national news story. Twitter was blowing up. Everyone was thinking about it. And then to see, and it's just a typical news media pattern where they shout the lie and then whisper the retraction. And many of our largest publications really haven't issued enough of an apology for the hatred that they are responsible for.
Yeah, it's also important to note just the extent to which the Democrat Party and the media essentially collude to advance a progressive agenda. Like, they are basically 100% in lockstep. All the media needed was an image, a video frame of a young white man in a MAGA hat and an elderly Native American man in the same frame, and the whole rest of the story could be completely fabricated. And they did exactly that. Why do they do it? Well, number one, they know they really want to animate the most radical elements of their base by portraying supporters of President Trump as being these sort of racist, nasty people. And number two, they want to intimidate conservatives from doing things like going out to the March for Life and promoting conservative ideas in the public square. We've seen this at Stanford, where the Stanford Daily has published entirely false articles, taking the words of our members out of context and just publishing oftentimes just blatant falsehoods. And it's all an attempt to sort of make sure that conservatives are afraid to speak up and promote our ideas. Luckily, it hasn't worked, and we've recently exposed the Stanford Daily as one of their editors admitted that, hey, we're a leftist publication. Why don't we just go up and admit it? If only the rest of the national news media were so honest as the Stanford Daily. Yeah,
I think it's really pathetic just how low the standards are for verification of news from organizations that are ostensibly all about verifying the news, because from day one for the Covington case, there were hours of footage. There was over an hour-long video, and they just looked over like a 10-second, 20-second clip, and they took it out of context. When the people who
just made it up, yeah,
they largely made it up. And if you actually look at the video, it's so egregious because it's basically the exact opposite of what they reported was true. I mean, really, they just saw, kid wearing a MAGA hat, he must be the bad guy, and look at these virtuous protesters taking him down. And really, the protesters were the ones mobbing. And I think that it really shows some serious pathologies in our culture when the left controls the media and they allow their narrative to shape the facts rather than allowing facts to shape the narrative.
Ultimately, it comes back to this. It comes back to the fact that the left views President Trump, and of course the media, their propaganda outlets the same way. President Trump is right now the single greatest threat to the progressive project to the left. And that is why they are trying to utterly destroy his agenda, with elements within the government and in the media. And that is no more prevalent in their efforts to utterly undermine President Trump's effort to enhance our border security and erect physical barriers at our southern border. And we have some commentary on that as well.
Orange man bad, as it were. That's like the default position of the Democratic Party.
Let's talk about what's new with the fight for border security, Ryan.
So a quick intro for the uninitiated. So as many of you know, we just had the longest shutdown in American history, but it's now temporarily ended. But unfortunately, it seems like negotiations on Capitol Hill have stalled. President Trump signed a bill to reopen the government for 3 weeks under the condition that negotiations on the wall would continue and be incorporated into the long-term budget bill. The Democrat proposal released yesterday contains new money for customs agents, scanners, aircraft, and boats to police the border and to provide humanitarian assistance for migrants. Conspicuously absent from this bill is any money for the proposed border wall.
Surprise.
What do you know? And the proposal also, unfortunately, freezes the number of Border Patrol agents at current levels, which is in conflict with Trump's proposal. Responding to this development, President Trump tweeted, "If the committee of Republicans and Democrats now meeting on border security is not discussing or contemplating a wall or physical barrier, they are wasting their time." Today, Nancy Pelosi gave a rambling press conference saying, quote, "There will be no wall money, or there will not be any wall money in our legislation." There has been some additional bickering back and forth in the time since, but all signs point to a deal being very difficult, probably not going to be reached between these two parties in Congress.
So I guess the question then is, what does President Trump do? He has a number of options available to him.
He's already talked about that he thinks he's really negative about all this. He's like, there's a 50-50 chance that I'm actually going to agree to them on anything.
I don't see why he wouldn't be negative.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with him. He's not, there's no way he's going to get what he wants unless he goes,
I think what we have to understand is a large part of this is just kabuki theater, because he needs to at least demonstrate that he acted in good faith. Because if he just unilaterally declared a national emergency without going to the Congress, number one, he would be derided by the left, which they're going to do anyway, but it would be even worse. And on top of that, that would set a dangerous precedent for future presidents not acting with Congress.
I'm not sure it would it would be a dangerous precedent, because if since the enactment of the National Emergencies Act, I mean, it's been used 42 times for various different purposes. So,
right.
The thing is, this is all a game. The Democrats have supported border fencing, border barriers many times in the past. The only reason they're opposing it now is because it was Trump's principal campaign promise, and they want to hit him like they hit George H.W. in the 90s when he promised he wouldn't raise taxes, and they snuck that in there to take him down. If our federal executive branch can unilaterally build bridges, schools, and whatever in Afghanistan, we can certainly build a wall at our southern border. Trump should declare a national emergency soon.
It's all politics.
Should move on to the next thing. The next item we wanted to address was essentially the radicalism of the freshman congressional class of Democrats. If you remember when when new Congress was inaugurated, we heard a lot from the media about the different firsts. First this, first that. All these different firsts. But a lot of the sort of paragons of excellence and the people that the Democrat Party was so excited about, there's some pretty sinister elements within these people's past and within their the ideology they espouse. So there's a number of different individuals we're going to talk about, members of Congress. But let's start with Ilhan Omar. Ilhan Omar is a representative from Minnesota. She's taking Keith Ellison's seat, and she is undeniably an anti-Semite. She has claimed, essentially in a tweet, that the Jews have hypnotized the world, essentially harking on very disgusting anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. And for that, the Democrats, Nancy Pelosi, rewarded her by putting her on the House Foreign Affairs Committee. So now she's going to be running our nation's foreign policy in the House, and she's already coming up with proposals with her good friend Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez to gut the Department of Defense and gut our military, because obviously a weaker United States of America is what she seeks. And there's some other interesting details about her. What do we know? What else is there?
Well, speaking of first, she's actually the first congressional representative who supports female genital mutilation. So that's always nice.
What an intersectional feminist.
And she's also rather brilliant. So we're going to play a quick clip here just to kind of illustrate her intellectual prowess. So if you could please play clip number 2.
Of inclusive societies we could all live in.
Well, positive one. We need to ask you about this.
Okay, yes,
you tweeted, we're going to put this up on the screen, regarding Republican Congressman Senator Lindsey Graham. I believe we have this tweet saying they got him, he is compromised. And there it is.
So
I wonder if you'd explain what you were talking
what else
about
did she
there.
do?
This sparked a fair amount of criticism.
Or something?
Well, there actually has been a rather credible allegation that she married her brother in an act of immigration fraud, and it hasn't been investigated to the extent that you would expect in a situation like this. And I mean, you can look and these are high quality publications, like the Milwaukee paper has reported on this, and it just really hasn't been looked into further. But I'm sure going down the line, if she ever had any larger political aspirations, this will come back.
But obviously now, kids in MAGA hats are the much more dangerous threat to our democracy.
Of course. And then there's Rashida Tlaib from Michigan. Now, Rashida, rose to fame by, calling the president a mother effer. In
front of her young son.
In front of her young son, setting a great example, obviously. She's also has a very anti-Semitic past. She actually, in her office, she crossed out the state of Israel on her map and labeled it Palestine. So clearly, does not believe in the right of Jews to have any sort of state of their own or self-determination. And then, of course, there's the wonderful Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, calling for a 70% tax rate, plundering the wealth of, the wealthy in our society. And this really speaks to the broader, rise of socialism in the Democrat Party. And, what is there to say about that?
Yeah, well, what you're really seeing unfortunately, isn't really anything new. I mean, you had the same rhetoric used in the 1920s by the Soviet Union, in the type of rhetoric that they used to try to advocate the command, control, or nationalization of agriculture. And we saw the downturn that effect had on the people. You had 150 million casualties in the 20th century alone due to famines caused by this failed project. And we even have the same thing even right now with Venezuela, where we have this immigration of labor from the country, and where 75 of adults have lost weight under the Maduro regime, And
You think that the whole socialism thing might be a convoluted scheme to finally put America on a diet, solve that obesity problem?
I mean, she has pointed to Venezuela as an example, a country where people are eating rats. It's really, really sickening. I mean, the amount of carnage and chaos and pain and suffering that this woman's policies are going to inflict upon our country.
Yeah, if I could just add 2 points, actually. I mean, it's quite fascinating that in the modern Democratic Party, or the Democratic Party of the past 2 years, it's actually much better to be a socialist than it is a billionaire. You see Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez getting, rewarded with all these committee assignments. She's apparently very popular on social media. But Howard Schultz or Michael Bloomberg, who want to run, they're saying that these these billionaires, shouldn't even exist.
Don't go far enough.
It's fascinating. And then, the second point on, Rashida Tlaib and, Ilhan Omar and her more anti-Semitic comments, it's fascinating that, when Steve King said those terrible things, those racist epithets, I believe, the entire media said, let's take him out of his committee assignments. And I think he
was roundly condemned by the conservative movement.
Yeah, rightly so, removed from his committee assignments. But when we have, it's the left, first of all, it's not mentioned in the press at all.
Right.
And they're rewarded with committee assignments.
Yeah.
Yeah, apparently the rules only apply to our party. And I think I think we should hold ourselves up to the highest standards.
We're the only party
but
with
it's
standards.
fascinating.
Right. So, I mean, that's the radicalism in the Democrat Party. But ultimately, just a concluding remark on this should come as no surprise. I mean, look at progressivism. First, it was, with Obamacare. Just have the government, take a little bit of the healthcare market.
It was nice
and
to see Ted Cruz talk about green eggs and ham, though.
Right? Yeah, that was fun. Ted bringing it home as always. But I mean, the bottom line is that, just look, we are, 8 years out from the passage of Obamacare, and now we're calling for, essentially the so-called Medicare for All, which is a complete Soviet-style healthcare system, which is going to, it's going to lead to the deaths and, of millions of Americans, and probably in the future, if it's ever enacted. So the left always says, oh, just come with us from point A to point B, and we're not going to go any farther. But as soon as you get to point B, they're right on to point C. So that's why you shouldn't compromise with these people, and because they're going to be very disingenuous about what their motives are, because that's just the nature of progressivism. It's this asymptotic graph that just continues on forever. So
Crazy 10 years ago was mainstream now, and that's
right.
The rule.
On to our next topic, and this is a hard topic to stomach, and it has to do essentially with recent proposals that expand the so-called right to butcher children in the womb. And let's start with. Let me preface it by saying this: as conservatives, we fundamentally believe in the equality of worth and moral worth of all human beings, that every single human individual is endowed with the right to life, that's the right not to be killed, the right to liberty, freedom from slavery, freedom from coercion, and property, the right not to be stolen from. And if you look at the history of the progressive movement, the Democrat Party in this country, it's essentially stood for, at various different points in its history and up to now, the antithesis to all of those principles. So obviously in the 19th century, Democrats were the most ardent supporters of, the slave power. They wanted to not only protect slavery where it existed, but expand it into places, just into the West. You look at, essentially with the turn of the 20th century, you had progressives advocating for theft and for redistribution of wealth, the violation of property rights, and now since the enactment of Roe v. Wade, an unconstitutional Supreme Court decision, Democrats have quite frankly been advocates of murder of our children, murder of our babies. And look at the way the Democrats view industry in this country. They hate the oil industry. They hate the coal industry. They hate the gas industry. All the industries that improve our standard of living, enable us to, transportation and whatnot, employ millions of people. They hate those industries. The financial services industry, they're constantly attacking so-called, the greedy Wall Street fat cats. The financial services industry, the industry that makes all other industries possible. They hate that. But there's one industry which they will not only condemn, but they are utterly beholden to it, and that's the abortion industry. The industry that butchers, that kills America's children. And so, Jose, we've basically have some analysis of the most recent pro-abortion proposals that are up in a number of states. So, Jose, could you walk us through that?
Yeah. So in Virginia, they are there's the Repeal Act by freshman delegate Kathy Tran, which eliminates the requirement that forces abortion during the second trimester to be performed in a hospital. This is kind of similar to. There was another Supreme Court case in Texas that I can't remember off the top of my head.
What they do in New York and Rhode Island?
In New York and Rhode Island, they it used to be that unless the woman's life is in danger, you couldn't perform a third trimester abortion. At least that's what it was in New York. I'm not sure what the law was in Rhode Island, but it's crazy now. Like now, third trimester is more. It's getting closer to the realm of convenience rather than originally it was just like if the woman's life is in danger, which I guess I understand a little bit more. I don't agree with it, but there's an argument to be made there. But the idea that you could kill a baby, just because you want to is crazy, especially if it's fully formed.
Where has our country gone to? When did we become a society that kills our own babies?
Yeah.
So we have a soundbite from Kathy Tran from Virginia. That is what, cut 3? All right, could we have cut 3 queued up? All right, we're getting it. This is from the woman who proposed this monstrous abortion bill in Virginia.
To do that.
Is it playing?
It's very unfortunate that our physicians, witnesses, were not able to attend today to speak specifically.
No, I'm talking about your bill. How late in the third trimester could a physician perform an abortion if he indicated it would impair the mental health of the woman?
Or physical health.
So there's Kathy Tran.
Okay.
I'm talking about the mental health.
So through the third trimester. The third trimester goes all the way up to 40 weeks.
Okay, but to the end of the third trimester.
Yep, I don't think we have a limit in the bill.
So,
she's squirming right now.
Where it's obvious that a woman is about to give birth, she has physical signs that she is about to give a birth. Would that still be a point at which she could request an abortion if she was so certified? She's dilating.
In labor.
Mr. Chairman, that would be a decision that the doctor, the physician, and the woman would make.
I understand that. I'm asking if your bill allows that.
My bill would allow that, yes.
I mean, you listen to that, and it's absolutely jarring that this is where we've come to as a nation. And it also debunks the whole myth of the moderate Democrat. Look at what happened in New York. As soon as the Democrats got their supermajority, as soon as they wiped Republicans out of the state Senate, first thing they did, legalize late-term abortion. Think about that. A woman in labor can seek an abortion and murder that child. And then even Ralph Northam, the so-called moderate governor of Virginia, didn't even know what would happen if the baby were born alive in the attempted abortion. Let's play cut 5 from Governor Ralph Northam of Virginia. This is some really disturbing stuff. This was a so-called moderate Democrat. He can't even decide whether or not it's acceptable to kill a baby if it's born alive after a botched abortion. So let's play cut 5.
Non-viable. So in this particular example, if a mother is in labor, I can tell you exactly what would happen. The infant would be delivered. The infant would be kept comfortable. The infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired. And then a discussion would ensue between the physicians and the mother. So I think this was really blown out of proportion. But again, we want the government not to be involved in these types of decisions. We want the decision to be made by the mothers and their providers. And this is why, Julie, that legislators, most of whom are men, by the way, shouldn't be telling a woman what she should and shouldn't be doing with her body.
Well, do you think this is the thing I fundamentally reject, the idea that somehow men shouldn't have a say in this at all. I mean, men love our children too. Everybody loves children. And the fact that you can just cut people out of the conversation because they're not giving birth is completely arbitrary distinction. Most women who get abortions have no idea what's actually going on. They're lied to by Planned Parenthood. They're oftentimes just as much as victims. So this is really sick stuff, and I really hope that we finally recognize the dignity of all people in this country, and as conservatives, that's what we stand for, and we're going to keep exposing it. We had a successful Change My Mind event about this earlier in the week. We got engaged with upwards of 70 people on this topic, exposed them to pro-life ideas for perhaps the first time, and we're going to keep hitting this topic hard because it's the most important moral issue of our time.
Yeah, I think I think this issue really just shows the legal, I guess the moral flexibility that the left just has, and the trend that they're taking. We had 10 years ago where abortion was at least seen as a necessary evil, and now it's just we're okay with it in the third trimester. It just shows that as the line moves, it's just a completely subjective way of defining someone's humanity. At our Change My Mind event, we had a vote where you think the line is. And the only real consensus that I think should be found is conception. It's the only clear line I think that exists.
And additionally, I mean, on this subject, think about Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood brings millions upon millions of dollars in revenue in from murdering children in the womb through abortion. But it's never enough. Just like the rest of the left, it's never enough for the abortion industry. So, we got to have late-term abortions. Got to go as late as possible. Also, hey, not enough just to make money off the abortion itself. Sell the body parts of the unborn child. Like they do with Planned Parenthood, selling those body parts. So if you want, we have President Trump is probably arguably the most pro-life president we've had it's certainly in this century. He, despite his past position, has taken a pretty strong, resolute stand on this issue. So if you are pro-life and you are ambivalent about whether or not you support the president, let's hear cut 4. Which shows starkly the contrast between the President Trump and the Democrats on this issue. The moral clarity of our president could not be clearer.
If you go with what Hillary is saying in the
2016 debate,
you can take the baby and rip the baby out of the womb of the mother.
He's absolutely
just
right.
Prior to the birth of the baby. Now, you can say that that's okay,
dilation and extraction.
And Hillary can say that that's okay, but it's not okay with me. Because based on what she's saying and based on where she's going and where she's been, you can take the baby and rip the baby out of the womb in the ninth month on the final day. And that's not acceptable.
Well, that is not what happens in these cases. And using that kind of scare rhetoric is just terribly unfortunate.
Okay, that's enough of that. Thank you. We can cut that now. So scare rhetoric, that's exactly what's happening now. You have 2 states which are certain to legalize abortion up to the day of birth, and she was talking about scare rhetoric. No, that's exactly what safe, legal, and rare is a joke. These people want abortion on demand anytime, anywhere. It never stops. It's like it's the asymptote. It just keeps going on and on forever. So that's the contrast. If you care about the sanctity of life, there's going to be a pretty clear choice in the 2020 election. So just internalize that, let that sink in, and think about that. So now on to our next topic.
All right, so we're going to be talking about some lighter things that are happening around the world, some of which are actually good, rather than just mutilating babies. So that's quite positive. So first off, peace progress in the Korean Peninsula. So today, President Trump announced that he and Kim Jong-un have finalized a date for their second summit following the historic summit last June. The date has yet to be announced specifically, but the time, location, and place have all been, agreed upon, and it's going to take place in late February. Obviously, the denuclearization of the peninsula is incredibly important, and while some progress has been made, we need a better timetable. On top of that, to demonstrate just how much of a joke Western politics has become, a comedian has actually taken the lead in the Ukrainian presidential race at 23 points, outpolling both the prime minister and the incumbent president. Apparently, he played the president of Ukraine in a popular TV show, and I suppose they liked his performance. Anyways, with the continual territorial aggressions of Russia...
They're following our lead. Good.
Yeah.
Let's hear a little bit of what's going on in Latin America, Michael.
Okay, absolutely.
That's probably more interesting.
Oh, not in America. There's a socialist government in Venezuela that's basically on the brink of collapse. There's serious civil unrest, there's starvation. I mean, obviously, the collapse of the socialist government is good. The amount of suffering that's going to follow in its wake is like an unfortunate side effect. I mean, an inevitable side effect. Whenever you go to socialism, this is what happens. You get starvation, you get riots, you get agony. And basically, the entire economy was propped up on cheap oil that Venezuela happened to be blessed with, and they used the money that they were getting from that to prop up this ridiculous welfare state. And now that the price of oil is actually at a reasonable level, it's not working anymore. So people are
What's
rioting.
the price of oil right now? It's like $50 to $60 a barrel?
60 something.
Yeah,
$60-something a barrel? That's what I thought.
It used to be substantially higher than that. I mean, and that's really what they built the back of their economy on. And that's what you do. That's what you get central planning. You plan it all on one resource, and then the resource goes, and then your economy goes, and then nobody has food.
Dutch disease at its finest.
And this is
Socialism at its
one fascinating thing is you see all these Democrats now who are advocating socialism, right? But they distance themselves from Chavez, from the socialist Venezuela state. They say, but at the same time, they did support the policies that he had enacted, leading to this point. When they took away his guns, I remember seeing some positive New York Times op-ed saying, this is a good thing. America should follow Chavez's lead. When they nationalized the oil industry, the same thing, positive reaction. But when all of those policies come to fruition and the country falls apart, now they're saying, oh, no, like, we don't support that. We support our
real socialism.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not done right.
It's never been tried. Yeah, but they liked all the things they did, like get out of town.
Real
they did support it.
utopia.
I mean, I remember a few years ago, even Democrats were holding Venezuela up as this paragon of social development and socialism and how it worked. And now, 4 years later, they're all walking back and deleting all those tweets and trying to pretend like that never happened.
Yeah, the moment Sean Penn or anyone in Hollywood starts to prop up any type of regime anywhere in the world, you kind of have a pretty good idea that it's not going to work out at all.
Okay, so basically do the opposite of what Hollywood tells you to every time.
Now, interestingly, in Latin America and South America, the winds, the political winds have shifted, particularly with a new government that has recently inaugurated in the massive country of Brazil. And I think the geopolitical implications of this are worth discussing. So someone take that away.
Yeah, I can talk about this. So clearly over the past, I want to say 10, 15 years, Brazil has had a series of presidents, of leaders, I don't know exactly.
Leftists.
Who are leftists, and that they've taken over the country and they've kind of created this corrupt state, taking away guns rights from people, kind of eliminating the powers of the police, eliminating, kind of leading to all this corruption within these state industries in which cronyism
so
flourishes.
Implementing the priorities of the cultural left.
Yeah, that's been a big thing as well. Kind of promoting all these sort of leftist ideologies within the schools. And finally, this past year in 2018. The Brazilian people finally said enough, and they elected Jair Bolsonaro, who's kind of said, I want to turn everything around. He's planning on returning gun rights because the crime is so bad that people are like worried about walking to their cars in some of these cities, right? And the only people that have the guns are the criminals. I mean, this is a common thing, but in Brazil, it's actually become true. The only people who have guns are the bad guys, the criminals.
Yep.
So he's thinking about returning gun rights to the people, and I think there are a lot of people excited about that. And I mean, one fascinating thing is that the night right after the election, there was this Brazilian political commentator saying, I'm very worried. He talked too much about God, right, in his victory speech, I believe. And this is, that's something I can clearly see happening today if Mike Pence ascended to the presidency. But this is it's actually a good thing that he's talking about God, right?
Absolutely.
And it's just the cultural left that's kind of controlling a lot of our institutions in these countries.
Yeah.
They just don't want to see change.
One interesting thing about Latin America is the leaders always tend to be, socialist leaders, but they're all Spanish countries. They're all extremely Catholic countries. The people are always very Catholic, and I think Brazil's an example. We're very conservative, and I think everyone's surprised that Bolsonaro won the election, but it's actually the people talking this time. I don't think most people have ever wanted socialism. They're always very Catholic. They always love. They always love God.
And the geopolitical implications of that election in Brazil are really worth discussing because here you have a country which through the reign of socialist governments has been pretty hostile to the United States. They've criticized us vociferously in the United Nations, and they're not friendly to American interests. But Bolsonaro, despite his flaws, and look, we're not going to, defend some of the statements he's made. He's said some pretty off. Right. I mean, he said some things that we shouldn't be defending, and we're not. But the fact this man wants to be an ally of the United States, he supports geopolitical priorities of the United States, like recognizing Jerusalem as the rightful capital of Israel. This is someone who wants to be our ally, and we should embrace those people who run powerful countries who want to be our allies. And that's the good thing about President Trump's foreign policy in this respect. What an America First foreign policy means is it means that you look for countries around the world and you say, partnering with Brazil is going to advance our interests in Latin America. Same can be said about the Gulf Arab states. And even though their human rights records aren't the best, President Trump knows that the first priority of an American president is to advance America's interests, to maintain and secure the liberty of our Americans and make decisions that are in the national security interests of the United States. And the fact that President Trump understands this and is clearly showing signs of wanting to pursue a cooperative, collaborative relationship with Brazil is a good thing. And I think that's quite frankly something that we take for granted, because as soon as a Democrat gets in power, do you honestly think, Kamala Harris is going to look at, President Kamala Harris would look at someone like Bolsonaro and say, hey, look at this guy who said all these terrible things, and he likes America, he likes American principles and values. He must be a bad guy, so, to heck with him. So that's another thing to think about in the next election is, are you looking for someone who's going to, do things? Americans don't think about Brazil all the time, but, we should be asking in our leaders for a foreign policy that, acts in the national security interests of the United States, and pursuing a partnership with Brazil clearly suits that end. So, yeah.
Hip hip for Bolsonaro.
Yeah, well, he's careful, yeah.
Except for the crazy crap you said. We're not defending that at all. But the pro-America stuff.
Yeah. So next on to some campus-related issues. On the topic of socialism, an organization called the International Socialist Organization at Stanford, which has consistently defended the Maduro regime in Brazil, the now illegitimate Maduro regime in Brazil, on their Facebook page day in and day out. We challenged them to a debate. And after about 3 weeks, they published a statement on their Facebook page saying they were refusing to debate us. And what were some of the reasons they cited exactly?
Basically because we do our job. Like, we bring in conservative speakers, we express our actual positions.
No conservative ideas. Basically saying that the argument is, they don't want to give a platform to a conservative organization. And honestly, I kind of understand why. Because think about it, if you're a leftist, majority of students probably don't really care that much, but a majority of students who are interested in politics do lean towards the left. So any opportunity to have your ideas challenged, that's only a losing situation for you if you're a leftist student organization. So that's why we've reached out to multiple student organizations about debating us. And they don't really want to have a debate because, people might hear conservatism and they might be persuaded to go the other way, and we can't have that. So it's in their interest not to have a dialogue, not to have a debate. So, that's interesting. And then we've got a speaking engagement coming up. Ben, you've done a lot of work on that lately. You've done some great work as our financial officer. So where are we on that?
So thank you. Yeah, after a long series of, let's just say this wasn't easy, but we're
it took 3 months.
Yeah. For a lot of groups, it takes 5 minutes. But we're bringing Dinesh.
If we were students for Justice in Palestine,
they'd fund it for us actually, and that's what they do. We've been trying to bring Dinesh D'Souza, noted conservative filmmaker, to campus. And as soon as we apply for funding, it gets leaked to the Stanford Daily.
Surprise!
Yeah. It begins and you see all these op-eds coming out. They're digging up all these, false things about D'Souza.
Just lying about him.
Yeah, trying to slander us, slander him, saying we're promoting all these terrible ideologies, which is absolutely false, right? And so what the Student Senate does is that they try to, use these quirks within their own constitution, their bylaws, to try to reject the funding.
They don't even know their own bylaws.
Yeah, first of all, they don't even know their own bylaws. And that's the problem they get into, right? These people are so obsessed with trying to defeat us, so obsessed with, not being challenged, right? Not having their own ideas challenged. And that's why they call free speech, hateful, because, they get worried when they're getting challenged.
What's the funny thing is we don't actually need their money to have this event. We had an outside donor, incredibly generous man, who offered to pay every expense associated with the event. We have plenty of donors, people who've offered to donate to us, 501c3s and, business people and whatnot, because they want to see conservative ideas come to Stanford. But Stanford's policy, which they basically wrote just for us, means that only a certain 1/2 of all funds for an event needs to come from quote unquote on-campus sources.
And when those on-campus sources are the student senate,
right,
who dislike us, let's say, greatly,
but
they refuse to provide us funding. I mean, where are we supposed to get this money? It's kind of a you're damned.
So what we decided to do is we exposed it in the media. We threatened a lawsuit. We got in contact with some First Amendment lawyers, and predictably, they caved. And now the contract is almost signed by all parties. We're just working out the final details of that. So the event will be, tickets will be officially posted in the next week and a half or so. And that event will be on February 28th in Cemex Auditorium. Dinesh D'Souza is going to be talking about revisionist history of the left, basically giving a full history of the Democrat Party, from slavery through Reconstruction, through the New Deal, through their, affairs with eugenics, and up to the present, especially exposing the consistent theme of stealing the fruits of people's labor. And it's going to be a really interesting talk, a riveting event. It's in Cemex again. It's a lot of people are going to be there. It's really going to be great. So if you want to hear conservative ideas, this will be an opportunity to do it, and that's the whole purpose of the organization.
Tickets are free, by the way.
Yeah, tickets are free. Yeah, so
free stuff.
Free stuff.
Only time we ever endorse free stuff. When we're giving it out.
Be happy here.
When it's the opportunity to hear conservative ideas. So we're really excited about that. This event will be a monumental step forward in opening up Stanford, turning it into a marketplace of ideas. And in a true marketplace ideas, where all sides are able to be heard, where students have access to conservative ideas as well as leftist ideas, as well as other ideas within sort of the political spectrum, then they really will be able to choose the best ideas. And the people sitting here know that those are conservative ideas. We have enough confidence in our principles that we are forerunners of the truth. And once people hear the truth will set them free. So we're really looking forward to that, and we're excited for that.
All right, and now just a few local stories that are affecting the Bay Area.
That old Bay Area.
The greatest. A San Francisco restaurant has announced that any potential customer wearing a Make America Great Again hat will be refused service, comparing the hats to a swastika or white KKK hood. Customers offered mixed responses, with one suggesting that the hat represents racism, intolerance, and exclusivity. Well, there's no better way to fight against intolerance and exclusivity than refusing to allow certain people into your restaurant. Another important. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm actually happy he did that. He's completely within his right, as a private citizen, as a private corporation to be, or as a private company to be able, to not accept the customers he wants to. Unfortunately, people on the right don't have that same right, apparently, all the time, according to the
very
left.
selectively applied.
So,
indeed.
Yeah. Isn't that probably a Civil Rights Act violation or something? I don't know.
We'll see. I mean,
violation of my freedom of expression.
It's probably a crappy restaurant anyway.
It's a private restaurant.
I was actually a little encouraged reading the story in the Chronicle. There were some customers that were kind of like, I mean, come on, guys. Like, the response was kind of mixed, and even the Chronicle was like, maybe this is a little crazy.
I mean, I wouldn't go into a restaurant wearing any kind of political.
I wouldn't either, but I mean, just the
insignia.
You just don't see this kind of thing happening the other way.
Yeah.
I bet nothing ever happened. They just want to get some nice press headlines.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm sure
virtue signal.
Maybe it'll increase their revenue. I mean, I don't know.
Probably will.
Another really interesting milestone that San Francisco has just reached. They're just setting records. We now have more drug addicts than high school students. The latest estimates from the city's health department say there are 24,500 injection drug users in the city by the Bay. That's 8,500 more than the nearly 16,000 high school students in the city.
What a great place to start a family, and
Great area. And to assist with the crisis, they have the brilliant idea to hand out free needles.
Oh, genius!
They distributed 5.8 million of them last year. 5.8 million needles distributed, and that's an increase of 500,000 over the previous year. So things are really going up there.
We need some more work on.
I mean, it's like I don't go to San Francisco. I avoid doing it because, I mean, you walk around there and I bet they're just heroin needles all over the parks, all over the green space, and then you go to the metro and it's just like, human feces all over the place. I mean, it reeks too. It reeks.
Yeah, San Francisco used to be this bastion of American industrialization, and now, it's become what it is, and it's really unfortunate. It's pretty sad.
If handing out these needles helps with the drug crisis, maybe we can start tossing matches into the wilderness to help with our forest fire problems we've been having. That should be a good one.
Well, this is fascinating because it really, I mean, some people have said it reminds them of New York in the 80s, right? You had a lot of drugs, you had a lot of crime, and actually residents eventually got fed up with it. Now it's San Francisco, so maybe their tolerance level is a bit higher. But eventually you had Republican mayors.
Yep.
You had Giuliani, you had Bloomberg, so maybe the Bay Area could turn around. I'm a very hopeful guy.
Yeah. I'm honestly not. I'm hopeful, but I'm down.
You live there, Ryan, right? I mean,
unfortunately, I do. So I know these firsthand.
Yeah. And I really hope that the city gets cleaned up because, I mean, as Jose mentioned, like there is a rich history there,
and it's so beautiful. It has the potential to be such a beautiful
democracy. And there are good people. I mean, I know a lot of San Franciscans, and there are good people everywhere. People who love this country, people who just want to move on with their lives and come to San Francisco because they want to join and take part in all of the wonderful opportunities that Silicon Valley offers, all the innovation, all of the entrepreneurship from technology to financial services, and it's really a great hub for that. It just shows that when you give the left a total monopolization over an area, things really disintegrate, and you're seeing it from Venezuela to San Francisco.
I think democracy has a way of fixing these problems, though, and hopefully, these sorts of issues will get solved in San Francisco. Right. I'm optimistic.
It becomes a question of, do people value their freedom?
Speaking of democracy solving problems, do you think that the State of the Union is going to give Trump any more leverage for getting the wall? I mean, he's going to have a huge platform. I think
it depends on what type of. I think he'll propose a deal. I mean, he's a deal maker, as he says, and I think he might propose. I've heard whispers of this, maybe like a Dreamers for like more than $5 billion, but for the wall deal.
Not a bad idea.
And I think people want border security. There's a polling majority on the wall, and there's a polling majority on legalizing the Dreamers. Yeah. So I'm sure if you could say, look, I want to help the Dreamers, and I want to help our country by building this wall and ensuring border security. How can the Democrats say no?
I see no problem with legalizing people who came here, not of their own volition.
They're basically Americans.
Yeah,
they've never known a country.
And then doing that in border security, which should fix the problem. But
I mean, it could incentivize further immigration, but that's why it's a compromise. We really should have passed it when we actually had the majority in Congress.
I'd be more.
But by building the wall, you're reducing that illegal immigration.
I'd be hesitant to do a pathway to citizenship, but I mean, I think legalization, people being able to work here. Just makes sense.
Yeah, it brings you back to a day where you could actually make bipartisan decision. Like 2006, instead of Donald Trump, it was Chuck Schumer advocating $12 billion for border spending.
For a wall.
It is hilarious to see all those old quotes of Democrats just saying the most Republican things today.
Well, the biggest enemy Democrats have is Democrats 10 years ago.
Yeah.
They were against gay marriage.
They were against. Who said, "I am adamantly against illegal immigrants." That's what Hillary Clinton said. I'm adamantly against illegal immigrants. Not even illegal immigration, but she's against the people themselves. I mean, I wouldn't say something like that.
Well, they look at patterns.
Some, I assume, are good people.
I mean, for Hillary Clinton, man, I mean, she and her super predator comment, too. Do you remember that?
They are floating an idea of bringing her back for 2020. That's going to be awkward.
Please, Democrats.
She's made some overtly racist comments.
Yeah. I was still expecting Michael Avenatti. I was bummed out.
Oh, I mean, I think we dodged a bullet there. That would have been annoying.
He might be a late caller. He might come in.
Yeah, well, I mean, interesting. You look at this.
Put as much money on
Democrat field. You look at the utter outrage over the potential run of Howard Schultz, and I believe the Democrats have just been utterly freaking out about that. Should we do some? Do we have?
I think we're running out of time here.
Well, I mean, we started late. I think. Didn't we start late? We'll see. Let's ask him. So. Which clip is Howard Schultz? It's clip 6. Could we have cut 6, please? just the media Democrat freak out over Howard Schultz. Cut 6.
Are consistently not doing what's necessary on behalf of the American people.
Oh, goodness.
A lot of Democrats are freaking out.
Absolute gift to Donald Trump.
Growing controversy swirling around the billionaire visionary behind Starbucks, the man who...
He could take away votes that would go to the Democratic nominee.
Handing President Trump a second term.
Many Democrats fear that could be disastrous.
Don't help elect Trump, you egotistical billionaire.
Scares me
Yes.
is that your entry into this race will guarantee Trump another 4 years.
Number one, are you still a Democrat? And number two, why are you doing this?
Even if it means hurting the Democratic candidate and helping to reelect Trump. And that's just a awful thing to do.
Running as a third-party candidate only helps Trump and maybe Putin. 2 words for you, just don't.
Doesn't get to be king just because he's so rich.
No, I don't think he should run.
Votes are so
See, they hate him
precious, as
because
we
he
saw
has money.
last
That's
time.
why
I
they hate him.
really
He came
do
from
not think
nothing,
that
rags
this
to
is the
riches.
time
That's
for
why
us
they
to
can't stand
have
him.
an independent
And if I
in
could
this
just
race.
say one thing, I mean, the collective media freak out about Howard Schultz. They're all saying, how he could give the presidency back to Trump. It really gives up the game when they're really, really worried that Trump could win again.
Yeah, I hope he runs, and I hope he gives election to Trump. So last thing we're going to end with is we have well, why don't you discuss it, Michael?
All right, well, in hopes of perhaps making this a more regular tradition, we've picked out a Trump tweet of the week, the most amusing thing Trump has tweeted out for all of his followers. So... This week's election was very contentious, but we decided upon.
We're about to get removed. So quick.
In the beautiful Midwest, wind chill temperatures are reaching minus 60 degrees, the coldest ever recorded. In coming days, expected to get even colder. People can't last outside even for minutes. What the hell is going on with global warming? Please come back fast. We need you.
So some Class A trolling from the President of the United States. We'll end on that. Thank you very much for tuning in. Have a good night, and God bless. We'll see you soon. We hope to see you back here soon. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for listening. That was the KZSU Student Hour, and you just heard the Stanford College Republicans. You are listening to KZSU 90.1 FM.